Hi there, thank you so much for joining me today. This video is my May update for my Pan Those Eyeshadows project. The basis of this project is at the beginning of the year, I randomly chose 5 eyeshadows in my entire eyeshadow collection, and I worked on that for an entire month. And once I hit pan on an eyeshadow, I would roll in a new random eyeshadow. So at any given time, I was working on 5 eyeshadows that I was trying to pan. I think I've done really well so far. I have hit pan on, I think, 10 of the eyeshadows, 9 or 10 of the eyeshadows that I've randomly chosen so far in this project. I'm averaging about 2 eyeshadows a month that I hit pan on, and I do have 2 more pans to share with you for this month. And I just feel like this project is really good for me. It's forced me to play with different color combinations, really get to know all the formulas that I have, and reach for palettes that sometimes get shoved to the back of the drawer. It's just a really great project for me. I know it's not for everybody, but I just think it's really working out for me, and I have a lot of new pans to show as a result, which is always really exciting. I do want to thank Alexi for creating the idea for this video. Since then, Rebecca Morgan, Sarah Rose, Dolores, a lot of people have brought on their own version of this project, and they're all doing a little bit differently to cater it better to how they use makeup and their personal style. Some people are choosing 6 eyeshadows, some people are just doing 5, some people are just choosing 5 new ones to play with every month, not trying to hit pan on them. Everyone's got different ways that they're doing it, and it's really fun to watch. So I'll have everyone I can find linked below, but if you just type in Pan Those Eyeshadows into YouTube, I'm sure the majority of the people will pop up. To get started, I am going to show the 5 shadows that I was working with in April. Let's talk about the 2 eyeshadows that I did hit pan on. The first one I hit pan on that I want to talk about is Sands of Time from the Bold Obsessions palette. It's this shade right here. It's kind of like a champagne shimmer shade. This was one that I had already used quite a bit. It's one that I used a lot on the inner corner. It was actually a complementary shade that I mentioned in my last video, which is usually a shade that isn't in my set of 5, but it's one that I use a lot to kind of complete the look. And that was my complementary shade, and then I randomly chose it to be one that I hit pan on. I think I only used it like 10 times before I hit pan on it. It was very easy to do, and it's something I really enjoy. It's a beautiful champagne shade, and it's one of the few eyeshadows that I pick one month and then hit pan on before the next month's update. So I'm glad to have one more pan to show, even though it was really easy to do. The next one was a lot harder to hit pan on. It's from the Tartelette in Bloom palette, and it's the shade Ramble. It's a brown, and it's got a little bit more of like a reddish tint to it. I randomly chose Rebel in my February update, so I have had this in my project for quite a few months now. I do have some pans in other shadows, some other matte shadows from this palette, so I knew how deep the pans were and how long it was probably going to take to hit pan. So I knew this was going to be more of like a long-term eyeshadow in my project, and I think 3 months is a pretty reasonable amount of time. I used it a lot as a deepener shade in my outer corner, and it was really pretty. I do have 4 pans now in this palette, and I'm excited to have so much progress showing. One thing that I noticed in my video that I just did a couple weeks ago, it was my video where I took all my eyeshadows and I swatched them and categorized them into color categories. So I had all my creams, all my yellows, all my blues, and I learned from that video that I have an egregious amount of dark chocolate brown colors, and I don't use them on a regular basis. At least I didn't before. I'm using them a lot more now and using them to kind of deepen up and make my looks a little bit more dramatic. Not today. I'm literally wearing one eyeshadow. I'm glad to have hit pan in one of the 1,000 chocolate brown shades that I own. I do want to point out that at this point I have fresh eyeshadows starting from March, meaning that I have hit pan on all the eyeshadows that I randomly chose in both January and February. So I'm only using eyeshadows now that have been chosen as early as March of this year. So that's exciting. I feel like I'm rotating through them pretty well. Now let's look at the 3 shades that I didn't hit pan on, but I did make pretty good progress on. The first one I want to talk about is from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette, and it's that gold shade. I've been focusing on the top half of the shade, and this is a gorgeous shade. It's not something that I wear every single day because I'm not one to wear like gold, really warm looks every single day. I do like to wear cooler tones and more neutral tones on a regular basis. And it's a gorgeous formula. I feel like people really talked about this palette a lot whenever it first came out, and I don't hear about it as much, but I do think that these shimmer shades and these mattes do perform really nicely. The shimmers aren't like the most blinding high shine, shimmer, glittery types of shades. They are a little bit more of like a refined, maybe a more sophisticated type of shimmer, if you guys know what I mean. And it's really nice for an everyday basis. It does have some fun mattes, and I think they perform really nicely as well. I think this is a good palette. I'm glad to have been reaching for this more as a result of this project, and I have no doubt that I'll have pan on that gold shade by next month. My next one is a single, and it's a matte shade from NYX, and it's in the shade Cougar. And whenever I introduced this in March of this year, it was practically brand new. I'd only used it a handful of times. I do use this sometimes in the crease, but I really prefer how this looks on the lower lash line. So I'll do anything I want on the lid, and then I will pop this on the lower lash line on a regular basis. And I think that's why I'm making such good progress, because I need to use a smaller brush for that. And so I'm kind of focusing on a smaller portion of the pan. I can kind of figure out how close I am by looking at the width of the pan and how deep down the hole is. I can optimistically assume that I will hit pan on this next month, especially if I use it as regularly as I did this month. Yellow is not something I would choose to wear every single day, just because I feel like it really takes over the entire look. So I will be sort of relieved when this is out of my project pan, so that I can focus on other colors and not be wearing yellow every single day. But that being said, I did enjoy wearing it. I incorporated it in some more creative looks that I did this month. I recently put up a video about 3 makeup looks I created that were inspired by art, by Pittsburgh artists more specifically, and I used this shade for one of those looks, and I really like how it pulled the look together and really added a pop. So it is something that I am more comfortable using now in the future, and it's something that introduced me to yellow eyeshadow and kind of normalizing it and making it something that I could incorporate into more looks. But I am going to be kind of relieved when this is no longer in the project. My very last shade is Catch a Tan. It's from the Milani Most Loved Matte Palette, and I'm not really sure why I don't have better progress to show on this. There is a tiny little baby dip, but it's not enough to warrant how many times I've used this. It's ironic to me because it's my most used shade this past month. I used this in pretty much every look that I created this past month, and I still only have a tiny bit of progress to show. I can't say if I'll be able to hit pan on this very quickly. I'm hoping, if not next month, the month after, just because it is kind of a warmer brown and it does make all of my looks pull a little bit warmer. And so I would like to move this out soon, just because I'm just starting to get a teensy bit burnt out on super warm looks. That being said, the shade is really pretty. It's versatile. It goes with a lot of different looks. I do typically use a crease shade in most of my looks anyway, so it isn't hard for me to find a way to incorporate this into my looks. I do enjoy using it. I just don't think I'm going to be hitting pan on it anytime soon. So typically in my videos I talk about bonus pans, which are eyeshadows that weren't in my set of 5 that I was working on, but they were other shadows that I was using regularly and I ended up hitting pan on them. They were bonus pans. I don't have any like that this month, so I'm going to fast forward into the next section, which is complementary shades. Complementary shades are shades that I use regularly to incorporate into my looks and kind of finish off the looks with the shades that I have chosen, but they're not a part of the 5 that I have randomly chosen to work on. And the 2 or 3 shades that I want to talk about are from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. I love this palette. I had to put it away for a while because I was working on some other projects or doing some other things, and so whenever I first bought it I used it a lot, and then it kind of got shoved to the back of the drawer. Not because I don't love it, I really do. It's one of my favorite palettes, and the 2 shades that I used the most are Crown, this corner shade right here. It looks white in the pan, but it's a little bit more of a duochrome shade, and it went really nicely with the golds and the yellows and the warm browns that I had in my Quintlet. So I would use this as an inner corner highlight, and it would kind of have a little bit of a peachy shift while still being brightening enough to put in my inner corner. So I use this quite a bit to kind of finish off my looks. The other shade I used a lot is Royal Highness, the one right next to it. It's a little bit more of a cool toned, neutral toned, shimmery lid shade, and I like to use this as an alternative to the gold shade from the Modern Metals palette. I don't want to use a bright gold, a bright yellow look every single day. I just don't want to do that, and so whenever I wanted to tone it down or make it a little bit more neutral or just kind of change up the look a little bit, I would use Royal Highness instead of the gold shade, and I loved it. I love this palette. I would also use Duchess a lot. Once I hit pan on that Rebel shade, I found myself wanting to use a darker brown color to incorporate in the look, so I would use Duchess. And I feel like I'm still gonna use this next month as well. I want to play around more with these purples and oranges here, and it's just a palette I am just really happy to have pulled out again to play with more. And it's really going nicely with the shadows that I already have in my Quintlet. Now let's talk about pan percentage. I am keeping track of how many pans I have in all of my eyeshadows and calculating what percentage of them have pans. So at the very beginning of the project, I had 132 shadows and I had pan in 8 of those. So my pan percentage was 6.1%. 6% of all my eyeshadows had pan in them. Now if we look at last month, I had just passed 12%. I had 18 shadows that had pan out of 146 shadows. Now this month, I have pan in 20 shadows, but I did purchase a couple new singles. I purchased 6 new singles from the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette, these ones right here. They were having a 50% off their singles sale and I couldn't resist. So I picked up a couple singles from there. So I now have 152 single shadows. 20 pans out of 152 means that my pan percentage is 13.2%. I've gone up just about 1% in the past month, even though I did add 6 more shades into my collection, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I think that that's really good progress, especially since my goal is to have anywhere from 20 to 25% of my eyeshadows have pan in them by the end of the year. And now for my favorite part of the video, where I will randomly choose 2 new shades to incorporate into my Quintlet. I'm going to use the Pretty Random app. I already have typed in the minimum of 1 and the maximum of 152, and I'm going to randomize it with you on camera. I got 26. Eyeshadow number 26 is from the Tartelette in Bloom palette, and it is the shade Sweetheart. It's funny because it's the shade that's right next to Rebel, which is the one I just hit pan on this month. This is a lighter color shade. It'll make for a beautiful crease color. I might even be able to use it as a blush because it has a tiny bit of a pinkish undertone as well. So who knows, maybe I'll be able to use it as a blush as well. It's a beautiful formula. I really like using this palette, so I have no problem incorporating another eyeshadow, but I know the pans are a lot deeper in these shadows, so it's going to take me a while to hit pan on it. Now for my last shadow, I'm going to once again randomize it with you, and I got number 17. Okay, so this is actually another shade from the Tartelette in Bloom palette, and it's the shade right here, Charmer, which is a cream shade. And if you can see, I already have pan in it. So because my goal is to try to hit pan on as many shades as I can, I'm going to, instead of focusing on Charmer, I'm going to randomly choose another eyeshadow. So one more time. I got the shade 52. Shade number 52 is from the Stila Soul palette, and the shade is Individual, which is this top shade right here. I have a lot of like mid-tone browns in my project now. This one is a little bit peachier, a little bit warmer than the one from the In Bloom palette. It is funny that I got 2 crease shades. So I'm gonna quickly jump off camera and do a swatch and show you the 5 shades that I'll be working with this month. Alright, so these are the 5 shades that I have. This first one is the gold shade from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. This is the NYX single in the shade Cougar. This is Catch a Tan from the Milani Most Loved Mattes palette. This is Sweetheart from the Tarte in Bloom palette. And this is Individual from the Stila Soul palette. This is a lot of browns, a lot of warm browns and golds. It's just like it's not too dissimilar to what I had last month. I'm not saying I'm disappointed by any means, because I remember my first month I had a bright pink, I had a bright coral, I had a bright shimmery green, I had a cool toned purple. I had a lot of different things going on, and it just was a little bit intense, and this is just a lot more doable, a lot more easy, which makes sense. The majority of my eyeshadows aren't super loud or colorful, so I am excited because I can use a lot of these as base shades and then go in with other fun colors that I want to play with and create lots of different looks that way. Like, I think this month I want to try using more olive greens and more purples as well. I apologize, I don't know why my voice is being weird. Next, I'll be showing a photo of all of the shadows that I had for each month. So I'll show January, February, March, and April, and May. I'll show each month as its own Quintlet. And for the end of the video, I will have a little compilation of all of the looks that I created this past month using the eyeshadows in my Pan Those Eyeshadows project. And that is everything I have. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week so far, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!